Hello, everyone. Here's another part of our How to Be Your Own Therapist. All right, stage 4, sharing your story with someone who will respect its richness. There's an expression, everyone has a book in them, and I believe this is true. Everyone has a story to tell that is completely unique to them. And I think it's deeply important that everyone has an opportunity to tell their story. When you tell your story, you are seen, heard, and hopefully validated. I worked in a palliative care for many years, and I would occasionally meet people close to death who'd never had the opportunity to tell their stories. Sometimes they would share it with me. Those moments were golden. It was a privilege to listen. Watching their eyes brighten and dim as they journeyed through their lives was incredibly moving. I've lost count of the number of times I've heard a dying person say, "It's a relief to tell someone this. I'm glad someone knows this. Thanks for listening to me. I didn't think anyone would be interested in my story. I feel like a weight has been lifted." And that sense of weight being lifted was a tangible, very almost every story. We have an opportunity now to tell your story in all its fullness and glory while you're alive. You don't have to wait until the end of your life, or worse, never tell your story at all. And the time is now, because ultimately now is all we have. Tomorrow is guaranteed to no one. How to tell your story? Well, I'm going to avoid being overly prescriptive here because you know how to tell your story best, simply because it's yours. There's no person better placed than you. All I'm going to do here is share a few tips that should help you get as much as possible out of this experience. First, choose someone you're comfortable with. Explain to them that you have been creating a timeline of your life. When I'm working with a client, I always suggest they find someone they consider a genuine pal. They are usually someone who is P, present, A, accepting, and L, loving. Avoid the friend or family members that interrupts, judges, interjects with their own stories, or shows any sign of disrespect for your story. I will say here that if any of the content of your story is highly distressing or traumatic, please don't hesitate to seek advice from your doctor or a mental health professional. Most issues can be handled within personal networks, but it is good to be mindful that sometimes professional interventions are important and essential. Find a location that's quiet and private. A pub or a nightclub may not be the best choice for this one. Then it's over to you. Share your timeline with somebody. Give them the gift of your story, unapologetically and honest. Remember, you are showing up, lowering your defenses, and letting someone see you as you truly are, without any of the social armor we're used to protecting us. This takes enormous courage. You are courageous. As you tell your story, try to avoid digressing or allowing the listener to therapize you as you talk. Allow the story to flow naturally. Let the emotions rise. Pause when you need to. Breathe, smile, cry, and take pride in your steps towards transformation. When this part of the work is completed, the next step is salvaging what you can from your story. This is mapping out stage and the beginning of what will, in time, develop into a much fuller understanding of who you are and why you are this way. More on this in chapter 3. For now, I'll leave you to tell your story. All right, this is Nigel's story. I find it useful to share case studies because I think they often bring issues to life or clarify questions you might have. Nigel worked for a large corporation. He arrived at my office seeking support with 3 issues: anxiety, often heightened on Sunday evenings; relationship difficulties; feeling a sense of failure. None of his issues made sense to him. He was good at his job, interpersonally warm, and had a huge successful career. He angrily blurted out, "I just don't understand why any of these bullshit feelings." I was confident we could make sense of it all, and I assured him of that. After the initial introductory session, we explored his timeline, which he resented doing. He said he felt irritated as he wanted therapy to make him happy, not upset. But naturally, the timeline was instrumental in helping us make sense of his struggle. He came from a loving family who did their best by him, and he didn't identify any major traumas in his life. There were, of course, highs and lows, heartaches, breakups, and some difficult times. However, one key period in his life generated a huge reaction on his timeline. Nigel was sent to private school age 11. His parents believed it would be good for him, but he was unhappy as his friends had gone to school locally. He never told them as he feared they would be disappointed. He wanted to go to a drama school, but he knew it wasn't something his parents wanted for him. It set out in motion a sense of failure. He recounted a sense of dread he always felt on Sundays. This Sunday night dread never left. It was during therapy we discovered that his corporate job was an extension of school. He didn't want to be there, and he wasn't living the life he wanted. His anxiety was now making sense to him. Nigel also discovered that he felt unheard when he was sent to private school. As an adult, he could see his parents were doing what they thought was best for him, but as a teenager, he felt unheard by them. This led to Nigel being mistrustful of people who wanted to get close to him. He described deliberately sabotaging a romantic relationship to avoid rejection. This mistrust in people had never been resolved. If Nigel hadn't found the courage to tell a story, we would never have figured out the core reason behind his struggles. His anxiety, relationship issues, and feelings of failure all made perfect sense now. Nigel was subsequently able to focus on unlearning his unhelpful beliefs around trust, himself, and other people. Chapter 3. Putting the pieces together. I've used this metaphor before, but I'm going to roll it out again, since I think it explains the point I need to make here perfectly. Therapy can be a little like doing a jigsaw. There are many pieces, that is, main highs and lows of your life, but the full picture, all there is to know about who you are and why you are that way, isn't clear until they are all put together. A jigsaw with a missing piece will always be incomplete. We need all the pieces. It's the same way when working through the parts of our story. We can't pick and choose which experience to focus on because they feel good. If we are to understand who we are and why we are the way that we are, we need to understand our whole story. Even if that means confronting some ugly feelings, or times when we might have behaved badly or been made to feel small. You might be wondering why understanding your story is so important. It's all in the past, after all. I've lost count of the number of times I've heard, "Do I really have to go through all this?" in the therapy room? And the short answer is yes. Because within your story, there are gems of information that will help create life-changing awareness in your life now. Your story has more power than you might think. I've also said this before, but it's worth saying again. No one else can recount your story or make sense of it the way you can. I can provide the guidance, but you are the expert in your life. I often remind my clients of this. I can never really know how a client feels or has experienced a life event. Yes, I can hypothesize and I can empathize, but I can never truly go through what they went through. This reminds me of a therapy client, Julie, who recounted a painful memory of not getting new shoes on the first day of school, age 10. All the other children appeared to have new shoes, and she didn't. All the time her family was struggling financially, and her dad dependent on alcohol. As she told this story, she wept inconsolably. As I watched her cry, I assumed her upset was linked to embarrassment or the other shame-related feelings around her school friends. But I was wrong. Her distress was linked to memories of severe physical pain because her shoes were so tight. She didn't tell her mom. Julie believed she couldn't bring additional burdens to an already heavily burdened mom. She feared that her needs would cause the family greater stress and that it would all fall apart. She therefore learned to suffer in silence, not only as a child, but most of her adult life. Her tears arose from a lifetime of unexpressed needs and fear of burdening anyone. Telling her story and putting the pieces together in therapy changed that. Without therapy, she likely would have suffered for the remainder of her life. And that is why your story is vitally important and why you, and only you, can make a sense of it. How do I connect my past to my present? Now that you have told your story, in this chapter, I'll talk you through how to make sense of it. We're going to connect the past events of your life with who you are today. This will help you understand why you are the way you are. Thanks for listening, guys. Please leave a comment if you like what I'm doing or if you don't like what I'm doing. Thanks.